Ladies and gentlemen, we are seeing history in the making. An uprising, an upswelling. It's amazing to see, it's amazing to watch. But over the generations, the role of transforming democracy and civil rights in a country has always been supposedly the job for the youth. It's always seemed like the job for Sisyphus, cursed to roll the stone up the hill, only for it to roll back again when different kinds of leadership show up. So what's going to happen this time? Is this going to snowball into an avalanche that's going to create a new political reality? Or is it going to fizzle and bang, a flash in the pan, fast and furious, but not so serious? Only time will tell.
And absolutely, they have said that they want a different form of dialogue and have invited the president to listen to them. And they do not want the president to prescribe how this conversation will happen, even as those in power say that it is important for dialogue to happen. Tonight, we host them in studio as we listen to the youth agenda. Good evening and welcome. I am George Maringa.
And indeed, it's an energetic moment right here in studio. The thrill, the excitement of change is basically what we can feel. That is what the air is all about. But the biggest question, as this gentleman would ask, is what will it take for us to take this conversation beyond the streets, beyond the protests, beyond all this, to a point where indeed we can get solutions that bedevil us as a country? Because this, you must remember, is not a fight between the Gen Z and the government, but basically it is a concern that is being presented to the leadership by the people. My name is Linda Alela.
And of course, we invite your feedback. But before that, very important conversation coming your way right here on the People's Court. First, the news on the Daily Report. Tonight, amid unrest, Gen Z protesters make good on their threat, taking to the streets to express anger over President Ruto's leadership. Anti-government protesters in Mombasa torch vehicles, vandalizing a hotel after a private gun holder shot indiscriminately at the crowd, injuring at least 3 people. Also tonight, ODM now claims at least 50 Kenyans are held incommunicado by state as the party threatens to initiate recall of 6 MPs who voted yes for the finance bill.
That ODM shall initiate and lead recall processes in the following constituencies: Game constituency, number 2, Bondo constituency, number 3, Navaholo constituency, number 4, Kajiado Central, number 5, Ikolomani, and lastly, Suba South in Homa Bay.
We want to welcome our viewers watching us on terrestrial platforms as well as our website and YouTube and the other social media platforms. I am at George Maringa _ across all the socials. You can also post to @Muyakane or @Linda_Alela or at TV47 News. On sign language interpretation tonight is Rhoda Nyamai. Now, tonight, on this day of protests in Nairobi, police officers were forced to use tear gas canisters in dispersing anti-government protesters. But amidst that was a bizarre turn of events, empty coffins along Moi Avenue carried and dropped by a section of the protesters, to them symbolic of mourning their comrades who lost their lives in the protest, leaving the police. They were scurrying to clear them. Sheila Chelangat opens our broadcast tonight with that report.
In the second week of the days set aside for protests at the Occupy CBD protests, a strange scene took center stage, that of empty coffins, some draped to the Kenyan flag, ferried and dropped by a section of the protesters. As per the protesters here, this was a visual statement, mourning their comrades who lost their lives in similar protests last week. Even the heavy presence of police officers in the area did not stop these protesters from engaging in what brought them to the CBD. Following this bizarre incident, police were in a rush, clearing the coffins out of the area. And in their numbers, protesters had made their way to the CBD, engaging the police in a cat-and-mouse game. As the police lobbed tear gas to disperse the crowds, they were met with a fury of stones thrown by some protesters. The protest dubbed 7 Days of Justice are happening despite the president extending an olive branch to protesters, announcing his will to have a conversation with the youth.
Listen to what the people are saying and not to our own voices. The young people have spoken in plain language that should be clear to everyone. Let's not be vague. Let's just do what the young people are telling the government to do.
Despite the gazettement of the deployment of KDF to contain the protests should they turn deadly, they were a no-show today at the CBD, with only the anti-riot police engaging protesters. Yet again, tear gas and stones brought the capital to a near standstill. And for the protesters, the fight is yet to be over, with Thursday marked and set aside for similar protests. Sheila Chelangat for TV47 at the Nairobi CBD.
Thank you, Sheila, for that. Tonight, business operators within Nairobi Central Business District were forced to protect their businesses from alleged looters after Tuesday's anti-finance bill that has now metamorphosed into anti-government protests turned chaotic, with looters taking advantage of the situation to steal everything and anything that their eyes set on, leaving entrepreneurs counting losses amounting to millions of shillings. Moige William now reports.
Nairobi Central Business District. And again, normalcy grinded to a halt for a third week now in the wake of what has turned to an anti-government protest. Businesses remaining shut, with business operators counting another lost day. Things being as they may in a twist of plot, whereas anti-riot police officers used every tactic at their disposal to keep protesters at bay, so are some business persons who maintain guard of their business premises from looters.
Tumeamua kulinda mali yetu kwa sababu jana kulikuwa na tension, wenye maduka hapa walikuwa wanaona wanahamisha mavitu, waleta magari usiku wakahamisha mali zao. Malaki kulikuwa na tetesi ni kama walikuwa nasikia ni kama hii nyumba itakuwa target. Tukaamua acha tukuje to protect wale wamebakisha mali yao huko ndani.
Armed with batons and rungus, these business owners remained hawked eye on suspected goons disguised as protesters who previously wreaked havoc during the anti-finance bill, breaking into stalls and looting everything their hands could get hold of.
Watu wenye wako town saisi, they are not peaceful people. Ni watu wako na malicious intent. Juu tumepatana, especially mimi nikiingia town time nilikuwa naingia, nilipatana na watu na mawe, and as peaceful protesters, ile time tulikuwa tunatokea hatuko tunashinda tukirusha mawe. We were just peaceful, carrying our placards, tunalilia haki zetu.
Monday, a number of suspected looters were presented to different courts within the country, but on Tuesday, such operators opted to mount their own security, expressing to have little faith of police to protecting their thousands, if not millions, of investments to suspected criminals.
Na support Gen Z na kosi yao, lakini kenye tumeona leo hawa si Gen Z, hawa ni wezi, na no wonder sisi kama business community tumeamua to pull up tukuja sasa to protect our businesses.
Such being the situation, a section of Nairobians have called on the government to expeditiously contain the situation, which they stated is rapidly getting out of hand.
Such was the case. Some businesses remained closed, an aftermath of Tuesday's protest after a section of Kenyans made through their threats to turn up for demonstrations. Moige William, TV47, Nairobi Central Business District.
Thank you, Moige, for that. Tonight, anti-government protests turned chaotic in Mombasa after 3 people were injured in a melee where a middle-aged man came out of a building and started shooting at protesters, claiming he was protecting his business from purported goons. This act enraged the protesters, who then decided to destroy the property, including burning 5 cars. Several shops along Nyerere Avenue and Digo Road were also vandalized. Paul Kirobi now reports.
This is the grim picture depicting Mombasa County's protest Tuesday. 5 vehicles that were parked outside Cafe Point burnt into ashes. Firefighters trying hard to cool down the flames. Several shops along Nyerere Avenue and Digo Road were also vandalized. What began peacefully quickly descended into chaos. Witnesses say the peaceful demonstrations turned chaotic when a middle-aged man emerged from a building housing the Cafe Point restaurant along Nyerere Avenue in Mombasa, allegedly brandishing a pistol. He aimed to protect his property from individuals who had infiltrated the demonstrations and were looting along the streets of Mombasa. He said to have opened fire, shooting indiscriminately towards the surging crowd. And when the sound of the gunfire stopped, at least 3 people were lying in a pool of blood on the roadside with serious gunshot wounds. The victims were rushed to the Coast General Teaching and Referral Hospital. 2 of the victims, identified as 24-year-old Edwin Bufa and 26-year-old Rashid Gumza, are currently receiving treatment. In a statement, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations DCI said the shooter has since been identified as the owner of the Cafe Point restaurant. The shooter was arrested, disarmed and placed in custody. The angry protesters descended on 5 vehicles that had been parked outside the business joint point and raised them to ashes. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations DCI said the shooter has since been identified as the owner of the Cafe Point restaurant. The shooter was arrested, disarmed and placed in custody. The angry protesters descended on 5 vehicles that had been parked outside the business joint point and raised them to ashes. The crowd chanted outside the building as they bayed for the blood of the alleged shooter. Armed anti-riot police officers had to be called in to rescue the man, who was still inside the building for more than 2 hours after the incident, and also stop the protesters from looting the restaurant. Officers from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations DCI rescued the man and speed off with him to a known destination. Paul Kirobi, TV47.
Thank you, Paul, for that. A total of 30 protesters were on Tuesday taken to Kenyatta National Hospital, KNH, following injuries sustained during anti-finance bill protests, bringing the number of injured persons to more than 215 since the protests began 2 weeks ago. And as Mike Kagwongo reports, discharged victims were covered by an emergency fund operational at the National Hospital, helping reduce the burden to family members.
Police were in the forefront on Tuesday to safeguard property and keep protesters from entering areas under control, as protesters sustained their push for the 3rd week in a row in protest against President William Ruto's administration. And as the situation fizzled out by evening, there were casualties, with a total of 30 demonstrators admitted to Kenyatta National Hospital alone, several of whom had been shot during the demonstrations. A number of injuries were, however, elicited by business owners who were protecting their property against criminals. Some of those hurt during the continuing anti-government protest received free medical care and discharged from Kenyatta National Hospital. According to KNH management, all the victims were covered by an emergency fund operational at the National Hospital, which takes care of the disaster victims and settles all the bills incurred by victims admitted from disasters. While few individuals discharged experienced blunt force trauma, KNH said the majority of the injuries were classed as soft tissue injuries. With more than 200 protesters having brought here at KNH to receive treatment, the Special Fund Kitty will continue aiding their treatment in order to get discharged. Mike Kagwongo, TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you, Mike. The streets of Nairobi have once again become battlegrounds as clashes erupted today between protesters and police forces. Wayaki Road in Kangemi bore witness to chaotic scenes with demonstrators barricading the road for over 7 hours. They hurled stones and debris, determined to make their voices heard against perceived police officers, as Ruga Eval now explains.
Unlike the peaceful marches seen last week, today's protest quickly escalated into a confrontation between a section of protesters and the police. Nairobi County Police Commander Adamson Bungei leading from the front line, using tear gas and firing warning shots to disperse crowds, further emphasizing the need to restore order amidst the growing tension. Last week, protests were characterized by their largely peaceful nature as demonstrators marched through Nairobi with banners and chants demanding social and political reforms. During the previous demonstrations, protesters dressed in somewhat identifiable uniforms, but during today's demonstrations, the outlook was different. The contrast between then and now showing the rapid escalation of tensions and the challenges faced by authorities in managing protests. At some point along the Waiyaki Way, Bungei had to ask for reinforcement of his security men. The resurgence of violent protests once again raising concerns about the grievances driving public unrest in the country. In the evening hours, tensions remained high, with residents of Kangemi having to walk home due to lack of means of transport. Despite the use of tear gas and gunfire by police officers, no injuries were reported during the confrontation. Ruga Eval, TV47.
Thank you, Ruga Eval, for that. Transport was disrupted for students returning to school after the midterm break early Tuesday due to ongoing demonstrations. Parents who managed to get their children back to school via public transport expressed frustration with the hiked prices caused by the unrest. Our reporter Andrin Kilemi has the details.
Students returning to school after the short midterm break found themselves navigating a turbulent sea of chaos as youth demonstrations erupted in Nairobi early Tuesday. Accompanied by their parents to various bus terminals, they dashed through the streets of Nairobi as they tried to maneuver the looming chaos to reach their destinations before the unrest descended.
Ninaharakisha sana nipeleke mtoto shule juu anaenda Mwea, tia gazi kianza at least akuwa amesonga mbele, akuwa ametoka town.
Mimi wangu hata hajarudi shule for now. Afadhali mimi nimpeleke juu najua ni punishment atapewa, juu mimi najali watoto wangu sana.
The situation led to hiked fares, with transport operators lamenting that the demonstrations have significantly slowed down their operations.
Hii ni trip ya kwenda Embu na kawaida yake inakuanga 150. So kwa leo unapata imepanda kwa 700. Na tujui hizo masaa zingine zenye zinakuja itakuwa ngapi.
Parents have now called on the government to address the demands of the citizens to prevent potential dangers for children traveling to and from school.
Serikali ya Kenya iangalie hii sinda ambayo tuko nayo kwa wakati huu, sababu itaparalyze kila kitu na watu wanaishi katika woga.
Ina haja kuita mkutano hapa na pale, ni rais atekeleze majukumu yake, afanye jinsi inavyostahili kwa sababu hali ya uchumi imetufinya.
The anti-finance bill protests now seem to have morphed into anti-government protests. This situation has not only affected learners, but has also affected other essential activities crucial for national development. Andrin Kilemi, TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you, Andrin. Cat-and-mouse games between protesters and police have been witnessed in various parts of the country as demonstrations continued for the second consecutive week. Protests were observed in several areas, including Kisumu, Makueni, Eldoret, and Kitale, as our reporter Kisewa Emory tells us.
Protesters have turned out for the second consecutive week in various parts of the country. One person has passed away in Kisii County, where the protests were allegedly infiltrated by criminal elements, and 15 people are currently nursing bullet wounds as a result of trying to infiltrate the home of Nyaribari Chache MP Jahir Chanda.
Biashara tunaathirika zaidi kwa sababu ya maandamano. Kozi maandamano inatuumiza kama sisi wafanye biashara, hakuna kitu yenye tunafanya. Sasa mtu unakuja unafungua kazi, unafikiria ni kazi unakuja kufanya, mnaanza kufukuzana na watu.
In Makueni County, the Mombasa-Nairobi highway remained closed as police made efforts to protect the property of some MPs who voted in favor of the controversial 2024-25 finance bill.
MP wetu mwengi alitusaliti. Utakubaliaje finance bill wakati sisi wenyewe ni maasla? Jamaa tujali. Unaona jamaa amekuwa serikalini, anakuwa anarudisha tena. Aende. Unaenda saa 12 kumchagua. Hivyo ndo utamtoa. Utamtoa hivyo.
Mimi nasema mwengi atoke. Na tunaomba serikali
IBC ikuwe constituted as early as now. Uweze kurecall wale MPs walitusaliti.
The message from the youth in various areas was the same. They want the government to take responsibility, fight corruption, and create an environment that enables youth employment.
It's so unfortunate, MP unapokea 2,000, hiyo milioni 2, unaweka kwa mfuko alafu unaanza kuto apologize. Hatutaki hiyo, na kama ulifanya hivyo na wewe ni MP, ujue salamu lazima zitakufikia.
Mr. President, anza kufight mambo na corruption ndio uongelee mambo na dialogue.
Ni kuwa president mwenye tuko nayo aaminiki, ni muongo. Sasa youths bado wako na ile feeling like huyu hata atasema na hatatimiza. That's why my youths wame come up kwa street na kujitokeza na kumwambia hadharani kwamba hiyo uongo yake sasa my youths watamtaka tena.
It remains to be seen whether the youth will continue with the protests even after several concessions were made by the president. Kisewa Emory, TV47.
Thank you, Emery. Tonight, the Social Health Authority, whose registration kicked off on Monday this week, might reveal a potential threat to data privacy if the listed terms and conditions are anything to go by. For instance, the authority will use information obtained from telephone and banking transactions to determine the contributor's means or income testing, which will be used to calculate the Social Health Authority's insurance premium to be paid by the household. Elizabeth Atieno with the details.
As the country gears towards the transition from National Health Insurance Fund to the new Social Health Authority, observers point out that there is something quite disturbing embedded in the new health insurance terms and conditions which might escape the eyes of many Kenyans and equally pose a potential threat to data privacy. For instance, on the services offered category, the conditions state that the Social Health Authority reserves the right to modify, increase or decrease the number of services offered and will bear no liability for any loss suffered. Regarding income testing, the Social Health Authority will utilize information obtained from your mobile phone usage, banking and microfinance transactions, Credit Reference Bureau data, retail and consumer transactions, business income, utility data, and any other relevant sources that can aid in determining your income. The outcome of the income estimation score will be used to calculate the Social Health Authority insurance premium to be paid by the contributor or household. Additionally, the terms and conditions under SHA state that they do not give any warranties or guarantees that the platform and information that is contained on it will be current, secure, accurate or complete. Officials from the Social Health Authority say they may be required to upgrade or carry out a routine maintenance on the platform, which may cause a slowdown in the platform's operations. They, however, add that the authority will not be liable for any indirect, incidental, or punitive damages or any loss of revenue, data, or any other intangible loss resulting from the contributor's inability to access the government services offered through the SHA platform. Elizabeth Atieno, TV47, Nairobi.
And we wait to see how that plays out. Running battles were witnessed in Nakuru city as police dispersed young people who had turned out to participate in the #OccupyEverywhere protest, while the police lobbed tear gas canisters at the protesters after the demonstrations were allegedly infiltrated by goons who attempted to loot businesses, as Chichi Josephine now tells us.
The police lobbed tear gas canisters at the protesting youth after the demonstrations were allegedly infiltrated by goons who attempted to loot businesses. At the same time, members of a group identifying itself as the Saba Saba movement have come forward to support the Gen Z anti-government protest, saying it is high time that the young people became more active on the matters governance.
Ninaunga mkono Gen Z. Na niwaambie wakati sisi tulikuwa vijana vibaru kama hawa, tulileta multipartyism. Kwa hivyo tunawaambia hata hawa wasikuja wakapoa
wakuje wagangania mpaka hiyo kiti, mpaka hiyo economical liberation ipatikane.
Lile ambalo hatungi mkono ni hii mambo ya kukua ya kwamba wakati maandamano inakaa iko very peaceful, kuna watu wanaingilia katikati na kuharibia hawa watoto wetu, kwa sababu kiangalia watoto wetu wanapogoma wako tu na simu peke yake, hawana mawe wala hawana lingine.
Meanwhile, activists in Nakuru and families of the young people who lost their lives during the recent anti-finance bill protest have urged the government and the security forces to take steps to prevent further unnecessary deaths.
I want to urge the authorities in this country to restrain themselves from using excessive force, especially when it comes to persons living with disability. We've seen even people with disability being tear gassed.
The police should not use a lot of force when quelling violence. If there was need, then they need to just immobilize them instead of killing them. Because it's our youth which we need to protect as a country moving forward.
They spoke after the post-mortem exercises of Michael and Austin Onyiso, who lost their lives last week after being shot. The post-mortem exercises revealed that the two died as a result of excessive bleeding and severe damage of the internal organs.
The deceased died out of what you call hemorrhagic shock. Essentially, they were shot, what's called a sharp object, and then they bled to death.
Chichi, Josephine, TV 47.
Thank you, Chichi. Tonight, the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, has said it will initiate and lead the recall of its 6 members of parliament for voting yes to the Finance Bill 2024. The decision made by the party's Central Management Committee, chaired by party leader Raila Odinga, said the 6 will serve as a lesson for the repeated offense of going against the wishes of the people. And as Apollo Kamau reports, recalling an MP is no walk in the park.
The contentious Finance Bill 2024 that triggered nationwide protests as MPs who voted yes continue to face the consequences of their actions, has claimed its first casualties in the ODM party after the party's Central Management Committee, chaired by party leader Raila Odinga, resolved to recall 6 MPs for going against the wishes of the people.
That ODM shall initiate and lead recall processes in the following constituencies in light of the current office holders' repeated violation of their sacred oath and the wishes of their electorate.
The 6 MPs, Elisha Odhiambo of Game, Bondo's Gideon Ochanda, Emmanuel Wangwe of Navaholo, Memusi Kanchori of Kajiado Central, Ikolomani's Bernard Shinali, and Karoli Omondi of Suba South will face the wrath of the party for what the party says is repeating the same offense twice, having supported the 2023 bill. Langata MP Felix Odiwuor, popularly known as Jalango, was spared for voting no against the bill this time round.
The criteria was very simple. In our statement, we have said repeat offenders. Those who voted against the wishes of the people in 2023 and again did it in 2024 because there are few who met their Damascus moments this year. This is the criteria we have applied the look, and we want to be able to focus on these 6 as a lesson to all the others.
The recall granted under Article 104 of the Constitution and the Elections Act is no walk in the park, given that at the moment there is no IEBC commission to receive a petition for the recall of an MP under Article 46 of the Elections Act, or even preside over a repeat election. Section 45 of the Election Act states that a petition for a recall has to be confirmed by the High Court on whether it has violated Chapter 6 of the Constitution. The petitioner must also get the support of 30% of registered voters in a constituency, with 15% from half of the wards in the constituency. In case IEBC is satisfied, it will verify the names and signatures for a month and issue a recall notice to the Speaker and conduct an election within 90 days after the publication of the question. The recalled MP is allowed in law to participate in the election, whose outcome will only be validated if the winner gets 50% of the registered voters in the constituency. Apul Kamau, TV 47.
Absolutely. It is 28 minutes past the hour. You're watching the Daily Report right here on TV 47, the home of untold stories. As I informed you earlier on, we're going to have a conversation on the youth agenda coming up on the People's Court, the segment we bring you every Tuesday. I just want to show you that our guests are already in studio. It is a full house as we discuss the youth agenda. What exactly do the youth want? How will that be addressed? How are they prescribing for that to happen? And of course, how do we expect the future to go about, especially on matters governance, politics, and much more that we're seeing in the country. My colleagues Victor Muyakane and Linda Alela will be joining me shortly to join this panel of experts as well as our audience to be able to have that important conversation. Keep your feedback coming. We are back in a few minutes. Stay with us.
Cape Media.
What they have to say.
Yes. And the Victor is only on without an underscore.
No underscore, no hyphens. True, original, authentic.
Organic.
Yes.
As authentic, as organic as the conversation we're going to have tonight on the youth agenda. Now, tonight we bring you quite an interesting and jam-packed session, especially on matters the youth agenda. And this is a population and a demographic that composes just about 70% of the population in the country and continues to inform discourse, especially in the last couple of days, especially in the last fortnight. On X, we continue to monitor your feedback as well. 22047 is our SMS line. And I'll also hand over to my colleagues to be able to tell us whom we have here in studio, because on one end we have the experts, on the other we have the young people.
Victor Moyakane, you want to begin by introducing the experts on that side?
Absolutely,
All
absolutely.
Right.
First, to my immediate left is, of course, the great Reverend Tony Kiama. Karibu sana.
Asante.
You are well known. You are the senior pastor of the River of God Church.
Yes.
But you're also a social commentator. You're also a governance expert. You are also what they call, Waswahili husema msanii ni kioo cha jamii. Basi je, mchungaji ni nani? That's a question for me to ask and for you to answer. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Next, we have our gentleman here, Mr. Richard Manwar. Am I saying it properly? Karibu sana. You are an analyst, but you're also what they call my learned friend. Karibu sana. Thank you. And of course, we have at the far end. Listen, this gentleman, I want to tell you something about this gentleman. This gentleman is no stranger to this set. But he's also somebody who's well known for his political views. He's also well known for his incisive and insightful comment. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
But just because he's here doesn't mean we're expecting to speak like business as usual.
He's a presidential candidate. He was, at least, been vying. I mean, that we also have to acknowledge.
Maybe you can bring in a lot of that, that insight.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Karibu sana, Daktari. All right. Karibu sana. Yeah.
And Linda,
okay, on this other side, I don't know whether we are supposed to mention
we should.
Them.
We should.
Names, all the names.
But you should be careful, because these are people who are very articulate and they wish to speak for themselves. So you got to be careful.
Absolutely. In fact,
let's allow them to.
Let's allow them to do so.
Yeah. Beginning with Wakili, Mombasa was on the other side, right?
Yes.
Mic check. Okay.
Turn it on.
Have it on?
Actually, you turned it off, so turn it on. Turn it on. It is off, so turn it on. Press again.
Some more?
Let me just show you.
Let's see.
You're not used to this, so let's show you. Okay, or we can actually just swap this.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
That's working? Right.
Yeah.
It's working. Just to put the record straight, I come from Kisii, and we don't have this there. So my name is Wakili Mwanza. I'm a law student from Mount Kenya University, Parklands campus.
All right.
Thank you.
Right behind you is the lady.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Masi Makau. I am a pro-Gen Z. I am a career coach, so I help my other Gen Zs to become more employable. I'm so glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
In other words, a Gen Z HR.
I'm a pro-Gen Z.
Pro-Gen Z.
All right.
Let's proceed.
Hi, my name is Wex Amos, former students president at the Cooperative University of Kenya, all the way from County 005, Lamu County.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Simon Awene, founder Slum Story. I work in the slums of Nairobi.
Right.
Hello, my name is Button Cliff. I'm currently the treasurer-elect for Riyadh University Students Association. I'm formerly Mr. Riara.
Brilliant.
I am the vice president Mount Kenya University, Nairobi campus. Also a student doing business management, banking and finance option.
All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ahmed Ibrahim is my name. Immediate president, Mount Kenya University, Thika main campus, a youth leader, and all the way from Coastal region. Thank you.
Of course. Last but not least.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on.
Vitalis Nyongesa is my name, Gen Z, business analyst, all the way from Bungoma County.
Brilliant. So that's quite a proper mix that you have. And of course, as you said, this is the conversation on the youth agenda. And of course, they have had quite some opinions regarding especially that roundtable that the president had on Sunday. You've seen what they've been saying. And yesterday, speaking to one of them, Shiko Keheka, she was saying they do not want the president to prescribe how that conversation will happen. They want the president to listen. So you'll be hearing what they have to say about that and what exactly they want, and is the conversation spiraling and metamorphosing into something greater.
Maybe we should ask them this.
Absolutely.
Victor
We can even start by
space or no space with the president? Space. You want the space, eh? You want the space to have a conversation with the president?
Not only space.
Let us have the microphone.
Yeah, who has the mic? Yeah.
It's not only the space. It should be our space.
Eh?
The other day, he said he's going to construct a space for us and we'll go there, where he will be the host and the co-host with the communication department and the Itumbi and whatever. We are not going there. All of them with the State House, with all the government officials, they should come to our space where us as the Gen Zs, we are the one who is going to host them. We will dictate who is going to speak, when, how, and for how long. And on what condition, on what grounds. We will tell them what they have been doing, and they will answer us there and then. If we go to their space, they will be the co-host, they will be the host, they will just inflate people to speak on our behalf, people that we don't know. So
it becomes very difficult to reach on something if at all then you will be dictating what it is that they say, in the sense that you will be wishing for them to say what your ears want to hear. Perhaps that could be the right thing to do, but maybe therein will come a lot of lies again.
No, we have done this before. We have had like 3-4 spaces since 2 weeks ago. These spaces, the highest had almost 150,000 people. It has never happened since our forefathers, since even the great-grandfathers are happy with us, are happy with what we are doing. And then we were having people talking simultaneously, giving ideas one after the other. I even documented them. I have a whole PDF of the same, what we discussed from that space, one after the other, and everything is down. So if he comes there, we have issues. We have 13 issues. By the way, we don't just want a conversation. We have 13 issues that he should do before he comes. He called for us for a meeting on Thursday and Friday. We are very busy. We will not be there. When we will be ready, we will call him, not him to call us.
And we'll be coming back to know what are these issues. And when you say we, who exactly? The Gen Zs, I'm being told you're leaderless, or we are leaderless, we would say. So yes, Victor Moyakane.
I have a question for everyone on this set. And I'd like as many perspectives as possible. Question number one, it's a question in 3 parts. Question number one, what do we make of what happened today on the streets? And question number 2, which is connected, what do we make of how the protests have turned out so far? Who wishes to go first?
Maybe we should throw it to this
Daktari, let's start with you. What do you make of what you've seen today and what you've seen in the run-up to today?
May I begin my apology to the victims of these uncalled for circumstances. And I apologize even on behalf of the President, because those are some of the things he ought to have done to begin with, because the things that are bedeviling our nation today, actually at this day and age, it is shameful. It is despicable. People should not be losing their life because they are exercising their constitutional rights, the rights that are endured within the Constitution, which actually are inalienable and should not be taken away, leave alone by an animal, but not even by a human being. So if people expressing their life, their rights, can be treated like privileges, and it's only politicians who treat people's rights as privileges with impunity that is uncalled for. And they use the forces, and in this case, police, who are also acting out of their required mandate, because I'm sure if we had active IPOA today, some of these police officers would be actually acted upon. If we had national cohesion, various commissions whose mandate is to make sure that we have a unity, and we are paying them. These are paid for institutions which should be functioning.
So what do you make of what happened today? the protests?
The protests proceed to expose both divides. There seems to be activism which lacks advocacy. And
Tell us what you mean by that.
Activism is our ability to express our concerns, and it began with the finance bill. And how people have communicated. We can communicate it in various manners. And of course, constitutional right now, we are using the Article 1, subsection 2, B of the Constitution, of the sovereign authority belongs to the people. You can exercise it directly or indirectly. And in this case, we are exercising it directly. And that's a constitutional provision.
Activism.
Exactly.
Talk to me about advocacy.
Now, advocacy brings us to the table to answer some hard questions, such that after activism, then what? Well, two case scenarios. You can sit on the table and talk with the person who you feel is grieving you and move forward. Or another option, Ruto must go. If Ruto goes, then what? You understand? So advocacy can clarify these solutions in a way that put the nation at the center. And then we move forward concretely with the solution, not always being caught up on fighting one another and the divide, and also not allowing this thing to be used even by external forces to take advantage of our vulnerability.
Thank you, Dr. I want Richard to jump in here. What do you make of what's been happening? I believe your mic is okay.
Thank you so much. First, I'll have to say we need perspective in everything that's happening in our country today. And the beginning point of this perspective is to actually define who is Gen Z, who is millennial. And from my understanding, I want to believe that a Gen Z and millennial who happen to be the champions of this cause, it goes beyond the date on your birth certificate. It's an attitude, it's an approach to life. It's a spirit of young people who believe that they can define their destiny. And to this end, we have to say the Gen Zs are the genius of this, because it just demonstrated that the government can actually listen. I'm excited because he talked about the Constitution and Article 1. But it's important for us to understand that we live in a constitutional democracy. And being in a constitutional democracy, our Constitution has 18 chapters, and we cannot afford to read the constitutional chapters in isolation. For instance, Article 1 of the Constitution talks about sovereignty of the people and supremacy of this Constitution. Article 2 talks about the Republic. Article 3 talks about citizenship. Article 4 talks about the Bill of Rights. Article 5 is land and environment. Article 6 is leadership and integrity. Article 7 is representation of the people. Article 8 is the legislature. Article 9 is the executive. Article 10 is the judiciary. Article 11 is devolved government. Article 12 is public finance. Article 13 is public service. Article 14 is national security. Article 15 is commissions and independent offices. Article 16 is amendment of this Constitution. Article 17 is general provisions. Article 18 is consequential and general provisions. I'm saying this because we cannot afford to read the Constitution in isolation. That aspect of the Constitution that says the sovereign power belongs to the people, there's also an article in that Constitution that says people have a right to property and that right has to be protected. That power of the Constitution, that Article 37, for instance, that says you have a right to picket and protest, you have to also know that there's a whole chapter that talks about national security, which is important. And maybe to use an analogy, I would like us to look at the Constitution and the country as a body. If your heart has a problem, because Ruto must go, as people are saying, is about the executive. So if that happens, for instance, what happens to commissions and independent officers, which is part of this Constitution? If that happens, for instance, what happens to your sovereign power? Because if we have to suspend our constitutional democracy, then we have to suspend also our power, which is sovereign. So I think we need to be very measured. We need to be very objective in what we're doing, Because on the one hand, people are suffering, they're losing property, they're losing lives. That is as important as your right to picket as a sovereign. So what I make of this is we need to be very balanced. We need a lot of perspective. This is a political situation. And to a very large extent, we need political solutions to political problems. Thank you.
All right. I mean, there's a lot that you're saying, Richard, that we will need to circle back on, just like you. But, sir, man of God, from where you sit, from where you stand, what do you make of what's been happening?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. And I thank God for every one of you here. And Kenya is a great country, and I bless the Lord to be Kenyan for such a time as this. Scripture says in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. All things, regardless of your perspective of what you think of what is going on. So I bless the Lord for this opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to learn and to grow. So when this whole thing erupted, number one, I was impressed. The Mandamanos have never taken this kind of shape before. They were peaceful, they were focused, and I was shocked. The girl child was leading. I was like, why? Boy child, uko wapi? So anyway, we saw, maturity. They were expressing their views. They were not vulgar. They were respecting property. And they were focused, very articulate. But then it has morphed. And I think for me what breaks my heart is that you're on the streets because you feel you are oppressed. But in that state, why should you break into another person's shop and destroy their property? Someone who's also as aggrieved as you. As in, two wrongs don't make a right. Yeah. This guy who runs this shop is not the guy who has aggrieved you. Maybe even his son is on the same street. Like the guy who was mugged on a street today, He was actually walking to protest. And he's mugged, he loses his phone, he loses his jacket. And because of the circumstances, the police are not able to, execute their mandate to protect, which is our right. The right of that particular person. And so, for me, my heart is heartbroken because this thing from the young people who are my son's age has been hijacked. And it's the nobility of the entire exercise has been watered down. And that breaks my heart because they had a cause and they have a right to be heard. But now no one is listening because of the mayhem and the loss of life. And so it saddens me. And successively, in 63, we had people in the bush, but the people who took power were not the people who shed blood, they were not in the trenches. Some opportunists, 92, 97, and culmination in 202. The people who took office had never cooled tear gas for a day. It's just opportunists who are cowards, in my opinion. And now I can see that this thing has morphed and some opportunists lacking on the sidelines will carry the day. And so everything these young people have been fighting for, everything they have said, all the blood are shed, will be for nothing. Yeah. And that saddens me. And that's what I make of it, in the sense that it was noble at first, it was nice and legal, and now it's morphed into something that I don't think I want to be part of. Yeah.
Just a little bit of clarity from political perspective. And you didn't introduce me as a party leader of Justice and Freedom Party. And Mkala mvue na haki umpe. That's a famous Swahili proverbs. And how I'm proud of our young people, because there's been a dire need of the participation of citizens in the democratic process, which has been wanting. And they brought it in its true color. And they are vibrating in the right frequency that we need to ride on. And we cannot afford to fall prey to the schemes and distractions of the enemy, whose intention is actually structured to make us discuss what you've just mentioned. And they are trying to derail them from the subject matter and now focus on those who are looting, whom we know they sponsor. If you want to know the Gen Zs, the first day when they came out on the street, that was their color. It was our girls walking straight. Some even had open shoes. There was nothing, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, so if this same government, and this is why when we're going to even address these things and we talk to the government, we must point the government straight into the face. If you are, instead of listening to us, we are coming out straight with a pure heart, and already you are coming to the table with tainted hearts, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Already you are having the blood of our compatriots in your hand, including little children. And then again now, you're messing the businesses of our own parents, and you want to put it on us, divide and rule. And that is not the spirit of what brought Gen Zs out. So I think we need to be very categorical and very firm, and let the state knows that they have specific responsibility. And that's the responsibility of the police, to protect. Instead of protecting, they've turned on to these young people, busting them with tear gas canisters, shooting them with live bullets. It is uncalled for, and it's a distraction that we should not allow to derail us from the actual subject matter.
Dr. Ari, we are going to take it away from you briefly, and then we come back after a quick short break, because we also need to hear what the ladies and gentlemen on this other side have to say. But there's also a message here from Wanjiko, who says that let it be remembered that these people that are labeled criminals that could have truly hijacked this process are as well Kenyans before they are criminals. And if things were okay in the country, perhaps they would not have hijacked the process. They would not have been criminals. We take a quick short break, and then we come back to get to hear what these ladies and gentlemen, because the majority of them actually were in the streets, have to say about those sentiments. brought about by the kind of unrest we've witnessed in the country. But then again, you might want to consider it as an unrest, but as the gentlemen evidently say, that it goes beyond that. It's a moment where we have matured democratically. But the question is how we forge forward, because then in this very whirlwind of process, we might actually get ourselves losing it. They keep reminding us that, you know, it began with that one spark of a finger, and before you know it, then of course South Sudan is where it is today. Before you know it, then Nigeria continues to battle with the question of Biafra vis-a-vis the other Nigerians. Of course, we see Cameroon as well struggling with the question of Ambazonians wanting to secede, and all that much. So we get into this space and we remind ourselves that in as much as we are out there for a good cause, it is necessary, it's important that then we chart the way forward, and that's basically what we're doing right now. Simon Awene, you're ready? Oh, let's speak to the ladies first, because at least there's a gentleman who's already spoken. We want you to react to basically what the elders are saying. Yes.
You know, the initial questions of what happened.
Oh, what happened today vis-a-vis the other times, you know, and where we're headed to.
Talking on behalf of young people right now. Yeah. What has been happening since it began to happen was a good cause, as we have already all agreed. And we all know how the government works and how politicians work. And I'm sad to hear our man of God talk about him not wanting to be part of. And that's the problem we have right now. Because if we are fighting this fight, if we are going to have a positive impact, it's not going to be about Gen Zs and millennials. They are going for pensions. That was part of the finance bill that we are told that is, it's going to be deleted. But we're not sure yet. That's another conversation anyway. But now, the thing is, what has been happening is being watered now politically. It's not us. That is not us on the street. The people who are really very passionate about this agenda are not the people looting. We are in social medias, and you know the intelligence in social media is so amazing. And everybody can tell you here the dirty secrets that are going on. And the thing is, we as young people, we know, and we're saying as it is. It's not us. The politicians, I know there's somewhere they can hear us, stop paying goons. Because it's watering out the agenda. And if we suppress this revolution, the next time it's going to burst, it's going to be chaos. Because as we all know, even if you're in a relationship, for example, if you're not putting agendas and solving them instantly, you keep on suppressing. And we're going to burst. That's not a lie.
I am curious.
So the conversation should not be watered down the way they are being done right now. Let's have a conversation. And the way the gentleman here was saying, let them come to us and ask us, what is the issue?
Okay.
Because we are not lying when you're saying things are not okay in this country. We're not.
All right.
Yeah.
George, let me loop in briefly, and I know this sort of course comes back to you. Loop in Simon Awene, who says you have begun an entity to work with the slums, and most of the times when we're talking about goons, unfortunately, fingers will always point in those directions, that perhaps because informal settlements, that these are the ones that have been paid by politicians, or these are the ones that are actually coming to steal and, you know, spoil the entire agenda. What do you make of these statements when they are coming up? Do you suppose that there's some element of truth in that, and that this then is going to water down the whole effort that we've put?
You see, Madam Leader, the problem that personally I feel like those guys who are working in the slum is the failure of Article 6, leadership and integrity. There is a lot of communication that politicians have had in the slum. There is no politician who campaigns in the universities. And even the conversation that we are going to have with the president is going to focus on the university leadership. And that is where the problem comes from in the villages, in the slums of Nairobi. Now, how do you get the slums of Nairobi structured leadership? It was maybe through National Youth Council, the NYCs that has failed. It was maybe through the political parties' leadership that has failed or has been taken over by the politicians. Now the problem is, these are emotional, hopeless youths that have been forgotten or have been lied to. And the one problem that we are facing in this country is a lying president. Do you think who is going to believe the president?
He's a lying president.
He's a lying president. And the problem that he's having, he speaks from both sides of his tongue. For example, today he say, I want the youth to come, we have a conversation. Then tomorrow he say, those are criminals, these are prisoners, we are going to deal with them, we have a CCTV camera. Tell me who from the slum that is going to face the president, and you've been named a prisoner, and your picture is showing where you are demonstrating, or perhaps you are captured where people were looting, or you had gone there to talk to a fellow youth that you know that was part of the loot. That the pictures, if you've seen your picture on this video, then you are supposed to surrender yourself at the DCI. And the president is calling you for a conversation. The problem that we are having, we as the youths, is some 3 funds that have failed to manage the slums. First fund is the NGCDF fund that is being single-handedly run by the MPs with their own cronies, their own family members. And the second fund is the National Affirmative Fund, the NGAF, where the women rep is using to do their parties everywhere. And the last fund is the one that they are using now to somehow create hopes for the youths, is the WESO fund, that also falls in the office of the MPs. One thing that can be done, the only solution, remove all the 3 funds, let us remain with the MPs practicing their 3 laws, their 3 roles: oversight, representation, and lawmaking.
Absolutely. I mean, a good number of you guys have been nodding, and I want to come to this gentleman. You've been yearning to speak. What do you make of today's events, and perhaps what would you like, I mean, to look or go differently?
Well, thank you very much. First and foremost, let me do what we've started doing as young people. And one thing I want to do, and I want my fellow youths to help me, is to send greetings to those people who started hijacking our conversation. We want to send greetings to those people who've tried to sell new agendas to what, against what we wanted as young people. Let me say, youths are the most powerful, but again, the most vulnerable generation in a country. It's very easy for you to be a president by using the same youth. But again, it's very easy for you to bring a country down by using the same youths. We started well the conversation of reject finance bill. And when we won, the conversation was with the real Gen Z. The conversation was, now that we've won the war, let us retreat and try to plan ourselves again and try to target, few agendas that we want the government to take care of. And when we said that, we had another voice that was brought, maybe financed by probably from different political sides, or maybe from certain people. We don't know what's happening in the government. And again, maybe we don't have the actual intel, but again, from young people, as a lady said, that we have intel of whatever is happening around. So there are people who tried to sell their agenda, and that brought the whole confusion. Today, we found that we came out, young people came out to protest, of course, to picket, and again to mourn who are those young people who were killed during the demonstration. But again, you could see some young people, probably some are saying maybe from ghetto, some were hired. But again, I can tell you, some of these young people who came out to loot from these different shops in Nairobi are young people from those villages, probably from not only from ghettos, but again from other villages and other cities around the Nairobi city, who are tired. These young people who are not given an opportunity to go to school. These young people who went to school, but due to high, the fee, you remember the government increased we have the new finance model. Some of these young people were denied an opportunity to sit in class and read. Some of these young people have already completed their courses in these different universities, but again, they are not assured of jobs. You remember the other time the CS Treasury said that this year we are not going to hire. That was a trigger. You remember that well, of course, there are different stories that were going on about whatever is going to, taxes. We are calling for tax holidays. We are calling for, the new university funding model to be brought down. But again, the government was not listening, and that's the whole thing that made us to go to the road. But again, I regret. Yeah. I regret a lot for whatever happened today. But again, I'm telling our young people is that we're still to the cause, and we are going to win this war. We might have retreated. We might have people who've tried to sell their new agendas. Yeah. But again, the new and the real Gen Z's voice is going to be heard when the time comes.
Thank you, X, because, talking about triggers, and we'll come back and have that conversation of triggers. I see on X at KOcheng254 saying, top state officials are having an increase in salary starting the 1st of this month, and somebody wants us to sit and converse. That's adding salt on a fresh wound. Do you all agree by perhaps nodding, or do you agree that's a trigger? Do you guys? Okay, we'll be coming back to that conversation, but we want to take a short commercial break. Our WhatsApp number, 0793-267-279, 0793-267-279, SMS line 22047. Please start with your name, where you're watching us from, followed by your question, feedback, or comment regarding the program tonight. We are just still beginning. The show still continues after this short commercial break. Do stay with us. That proceeded for that commercial break, we did have a conversation, especially on matters, the triggers that the Gen Zs are facing. We've seen what's happening today. Several quarters, and including them here in studio, telling us that those who are looting on the streets, those who have been robbing and stealing, are not Gen Zs, and this has been an infiltration from their noble cause. And Linda, before we proceed, perhaps you can take us through some of the feedback that you're seeing on the WhatsApp number.
Yes, because it's the People's Court. We also engage those ones that are back at home. There's a gentleman who says, I agree with the political analyst, because as we approached to protest, and there were those who already had stones to break up businesses. So today's act was not aimed to Gen Z. I think that's the only one we can take, at least for now, so that we allow this gentleman. They say they have to. Yeah,
they need to contribute. Go ahead.
But okay.
I'm delighted to be back here. This is not the first time. I'm delighted. Allow me first of all to send my sincere condolences to the gallant soldiers we lost during this peaceful demonstration, specifically to Rex Masai, that we come from the same estate in High Rise. Then again, what is agitating the Gen Z is very clear. Number one, what the president is trying to do, we are not happy. After the demonstration that happened on Tuesday last week, the first step the president took was to invite the bishops in State House. Number one, these bishops are not on the streets. The bishops are not Gen Z. You understand? I think the president is not getting it right. Number one, we want to send a message that the bishop remain at the pulpits. Let the president exclude the bishops from this thing. And I'm sending a message to the bishop as well. Right now is not the right time to associate with the president. Because also, we all know that the president has been lying and lying and lying. And also, when you come to the churches, we'll quote you to be the same. The Gen Zs are agitated because of the corruption cases that has been happening, and nothing, the president has not taken any step. We know the case of Linturi, what happened. Most of us, we expected that something will be done, but something was not done. The mismanagement of public resources, it has been happening in this country, but there's nothing that has been done. Lack of employment. The youths are unemployed. Most of us who sit here, I know we are degree holders. No one has a stable income, a stable job, a job that can sustain his needs. The Gen Zs are at the age of marrying. Am I lying? But we cannot marry because of the expense and no income. You find that the things that it was on the finance bill, it's to increase the taxes on the diapers. That is very sensitive. If you increase the tax on the diapers, exactly. Now we have to abstain.
Hold it right there. Mr. President, we're coming to you briefly before we come to you, Victor Moyakani. I just want to go through the list that I have here, and you'll tell us whether some of these are the concerns that you are highlighting, because most of the people said, well, after the finance bill, then what? So 60 years of plunder of public resources. They're about historical land injustices, about extrajudicial killings and unresolved political murders, about nepotism and lack of meritocracy in appointments to public offices, about economic sabotage by the West, well, of course, mentioning the Bretton Woods institutions, about diminished economic opportunities for young people, about capture of independent institutions by the ruling elite, about the capture of the church by the ruling elite, about the system that is fundamentally broken and that must be uprooted in its entirety.
So I could
Mr.
see
President.
some nods and some shaking of the heads. So some are in agreement, some
no. All right, Mr. President.
Yes.
Okay.
We've missed some.
We've missed some, okay?
Go ahead. You can speak.
That is why, and actually this is coming to you because you said you had about 13 concerns that you wanted addressed. And I mean, if any, fine. If one is to be uprooted, tell us which one is supposed to be uprooted.
Thank you so much for that. And that is why we are together. And this is not all about Gen Zs. It's about the millennials, people. Generation X, and even Generation Alpha. Now, allow me just to quickly, just to highlight just on specifics of what our demands before we call him to where we are.
And then we're also going to ask you what is the source. All
exactly,
right,
exactly. I'm not the spokesperson for Gen Z. That needs to be clear. We are leaderless. We only have a leader who they killed, who is called Jacob Juba.
Okay.
That's our leader. That's guiding us. And actually, he has just communicated to me. I will read his text.
Okay.
I will read the text after now. We are very equipped.
All right.
We are very equipped. So these are the non-negotiable demands to Ruto and his greedy government. Number one, scrapping of all CS position. Number two, scrapping the useless housing levy. Number three, proper and detailed audit of the national debt according to our constitution, Article 35, that we need access to information. If he tells us that every day we have loans, let him give us the pay bill of China, we will pay ourselves.
Okay.
Number four, sack all government officials with criminal records and integrity issues, starting with Mithika Linturi with the fake fertilizer scandal. Number five, full restoration of Linda Mama program and total scrapping of the oppressive shift. What you have just announced on your news right now. How do you determine how much you will charge me? Me as a comrade, my parents hustle, sell land, send me 60,000 in my M-Pesa. Then you want to use my M-Pesa statement to know how much you will charge me? Really? Anyway, I'm very bitter. We have nothing to smile about.
Disclaimers as well.
Thank you so much. Number six, constitute the IBC within the next 30 days to recall all our rogue MPs. Number seven, obey court orders and cancel all plans to take our police to Haiti. Number 8, employ all JSC teachers to permanent and pensionable terms. Number 9, employ intern doctors of their previous payment terms. Doctors can't earn less than useless MPs. Number 10, reduce all MP salary and allowances to be capped at cash 200,000. MPs can never earn more than doctors in a third world struggling economy. It's totally unacceptable. Number 11, scrap the useless and wasteful position of women rep and use the money used to pay their salaries to increase salaries for civil servants.
I'm a woman. Proceed.
Exactly. You can run for president. There's provision for that.
All right.
Number 12, restore the school feeding program fund. Number 13, all government officials. This one should go to the MPs who used aeroplanes. You know, I come from Kisii. I'm not used to this was heavy English. From Nairobi to Thika. How do you use an aeroplane from Nairobi to Thika to go and kill somebody? Then you come back.
That as well is something that, of course, is
still in court. Point
number 13, so that when
all government officials and public servants must travel around with government-owned vehicles, trains, aeroplanes, and helicopters to curb corruption and conflict of interest. And
lastly, hold it there.
Lastly, Ruto should stop state capture of the judiciary, legislature, and resign with immediate effect.
Aye.
All right. Absolutely. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a number of questions that have come in from the public, but also a number of questions that we have here. And this is to everyone involved. About 20-something years ago, but I want to say 24 years ago, there was a song that came out, and the title of the song was a question: will the real Slim Shady please stand up? Will the real Gen Zs please stand up, is my question. There seems to be a lot of finger-pointing when it comes to the looting, the destruction of property, and the sexual harassment that people have gone through on the streets, and so on. So who's actually going to take responsibility for it?
Police.
Mercy. Who takes responsibility for what actually everyone, including the people on the streets, can actually point to be acts of criminality? Who takes responsibility for that?
Okay, thank you so much for that opportunity. And again, before I answer that question, I really want to pass my condolences to everybody who lost their young ones. We are young and we know how it feels. So I want to just reiterate what my sister Nancy had said. We as Gen Zs, we are really peaceful and we have showed you our real colors. We are not here to bring chaos in the society. So for us, we have taken the responsibility. We know what we need, and that's why in the first demonstrations, which were in the last 2 weeks, we were very peaceful. What was our agenda? We were rejecting finance bills. Again, I really want to contribute about the trinkers, because I also wanted to contribute again.
I'm sorry, Mercy. Allow me to ask, and to all of you as well. And I know in the current environment, this question might be construed as quite loaded. But here's a question to people who are watching, the young people on the street. The umbrella is saying Gen Z. We are for this, and this. How does one distinguish between the real Gen Z, as I've heard it mentioned, and the ones that are not real Gen Z? How does one distinguish between the looters? How does one looters from the real Gen Z, from the agenda hijackers, from the loafers and louts, and all of how does one distinguish between that when you see a mass of people coming at you? Can we,
Mr. President,
can you help us distinguish that?
Thank you.
Ahmed, you've been
that's our collective
quiet.
responsibility. Yeah? For me, that's our collective responsibility, because number one, I think the securities, the police have been, in one way or the other, they have not been fair to the real Gen Zs. So being a collective responsibility, I mean, the real Gen Zs that are peacefully protesting, they should, anytime they notice or recognize an alarming matter, an alarming issue from a certain figure, they should actually report or handle with him categorically. That's number one. Number two, the police and the KDF that are there looking or disturbing the peaceful protesters. They should rather be dealing with these goons and hooligans, buffoons. Thank you.
So how does one identify this?
That's why I say it's a collective responsibility. That means we as the real Gen Zs, anytime we identify an alarming matter, alarming issue, alarming act that isn't to our interest, in line with our grievances or with our agendas, then we should immediately take an action. So as the police that are actually safeguarding or monitoring the situation.
All right, the gentleman at the back, but we take a quick break over.
No, kindly I would like us to hold the break so that we don't lose the momentum. You have something to say.
Let's allow the gentleman at the back, right.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. So to begin with the Gen Z, who is a Gen Z? A Gen Z is someone who's born between 1997 to 2012. These are Gen Zs. So when I'm in the streets and I see someone like a pastor here, automatically, that's not a Gen Z. You know.
And to that, let me ask, does that mean then that other generations are not welcome to share in the protests and that sort of thing? Okay,
the other generations are all welcome to in the protests, but the Gen Zs, they have said that there are people born between 1997 to 2012 are the ones who started the protests, and they're the ones who are leading it. So the others are just welcome to push us, like, let's go. Yeah.
I suppose then the question, and allow me to just, I will dwell on this for a bit. There's a concern among various quarters in the public that among the genuine protesters are people whose agendas are different. You've mentioned that, okay? So whose responsibility is it to weed out those agendas and to make sure they don't affect the integrity of the main agenda for the real Gen Zs? Whose responsibility is that?
Thank you. So one of the things that Gen Z is talking about is being leaderless. And being leaderless got its strengths, but again, its weaknesses. Yes. One of the strengths is that it's very difficult for the government or for any other institution like DCI to come and pinpoint leaders. You know, when you pinpoint leaders, sometimes you'll leave the movement, going down to its knees. But again, its weaknesses is that we are not going to have one direction. We are not going to know when to attack and when to retreat. And this is what causing all of these challenges. Because if we had leaders, it would have been very easy for us to identify ourselves, because probably we are going to say, this is how we are going to dress, and this is how we are going to address, and these are directions that we are going to follow. If we face difficulties, then through the leaders, it will be very easy for them to announce that this is not part of what we had planned, so we are retreating. This is the direction we are moving to. We are going to attack those who are attacking maybe premises. We are going to have a sense of direction, and that will be easier for us to identify the real Gen Zs and those who are hijacking the agenda of the Gen Zs.
Omonsa is asking this, all right?
Just before that, there was a comment by Richard a little bit earlier on looking at the Constitution, interpreting the Constitution in totality, in relation with all the other, each clause in relation to the other, and not interpreting something in isolation. What's your comment on that, Omonsa, just before we go on break?
My comment, thank you so much for reminding me, and I would like to maybe address that to my good friend seated there. If I can just give a small background of how we started this Gen Z. This started from Eldoret. You remember the scandal of students going abroad? Their parents' money were looted and all that. When that lady came forth and said, no, you can't do this, that is when this movement started, step by step. It came to Kiambu Road, where our good friend, a comrade, who is an Uber driver, who was just driving, trying to do his car business, to get at least 1,000 per day. He was being asked 10,000 shillings a bribe. Then he just went ahead and massaged the police, just politely massaging the police. That's how it started. then we went back now. Coming back to the finance bill. Now the finance bill is what made us to get agitated and get to the roads. And now on the first day, on Tuesday, we went to the streets. Tuesday we were very peaceful. You can confirm. You have news, you have videos here and all photos. We were very peaceful. We did not do anything. But were the police peaceful? We went with only phones and maybe water bottles and all that. We're very peaceful. Were the police peaceful? When our brother tells us that we should really not maybe destroy people's businesses. You see, when the president was being asked about the people who died, what was he answering? 2.what billion of investment was vandalized. That is what his interest is. His interest is not about our lives. His interest is not about our suffering. So when my good friend has asked, how can we maybe work with this constitution, not trying to use double standards, maybe favoring this one and favoring this one. We started peacefully. Did they start peacefully? No. They called us criminals, even when we are peaceful.
Omonza, we want to get to the level of objectivity as well as, avoid radical approaches, one-sided approaches, and address this matter, soberly. So allow us to take a short break, and then we come back. And I'm not trying to say that we're not sober at this far, but then again, it's important that we also get to hear what the gentlemen have to say. They have been here long enough, and therefore they can tell you just how good a trajectory we're taking or not. So let's take this short break, and then we come back with that.
protests. Big question, what next? Another emerging question, will the real Gen Z please stand up? A lot of distinctions are being put on the table, who's the right one, who's not. Madam President, you had a point on that, and I would like the gentleman here to jump in on that as well. How do you protect the agenda from the so-called hijackers?
That one we can do collectively, as you said. But it's also the work of the police right now to protect us as we protect the agenda. Why? Our agenda is not for us only, as I said earlier. It's also benefiting them. Actually, we all know what they earn. We all know, some of us know what they earn. That the state of the nation needs to improve for them to even be in a better living situations. Now, if you say, how do we distinguish between a looter and a Gen Z, somebody who's protesting? Even as a police, I think they have that training just to tell from the behavior someone has. You can't compare the behavior of looters, the way we are seeing on TV, with the protesters the day they were protesting, like on Tuesday. Those people were just having placards, and you see, if you cannot, you can look at the body language, the behavior, and if somebody goes and loots at one place, why don't we start with those ones? Now, they should act as examples so that we can continue with the agenda. Yeah.
All right. Anyone else with a point?
And the police should also not pull back when the time the looters come in. The way they didn't pull back the time we were very peaceful. They should not pull back right now.
Just before we shift to this other side, real quick, please.
Actually, the question should be, why do we have looters in this country? If this country, everyone was employed or having something to bring on the table, we couldn't be having these looters, because looters are there because of unemployment. They don't have anything to do. And Gen Z, we have power in social media and internet. We all know that what has been happening. The looters came all the way from the city hall. Am I lying, my colleagues? Yeah, so we know, and we have intel on our ways. So we are just calling the government. The government is responsible of this. The looters are there, if it's Gen Z or not Gen Z, but why do we have them? And it's the government responsibility to protect the business of the people and protect the citizens and the peaceful protesters. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, lots of questions here, lots of insights. Let's go. Reverend Kama.
To our friend here, you said that the president should not call bishops. First of all of us are citizens of this country. We have the right of association. You have a right to associate with whoever you want. And I don't know why he called them there, but maybe he called them for counsel or whatever the reason. But he has a right to talk to whoever he wants. I think that's a right he has. That's a right he has. I also want to say that I have heard on social media severally, I don't know whether they are Gen Z or not, or they are the looters, but there are videos flying around that when we are done with government, we will come for church. And I want to put the record straight.
Allah?
Kanisa see a pastor.
Just hang on a second, sir.
They are confirming.
You're saying? So
you need to have the microphone.
We need to have the microphone. Madam, you were saying something. Please. You're confirming that...
I'm confirming that we're coming for the church. That's no lie. Why? Churches are... I'm not saying all churches, but most are enablers. They're the people who campaign for these people. And let me tell you, what are we doing? If my mother is illiterate back in the village in Meru, okay? If they know, the way they believe in you, and they are women are majority voters. You see, what about the border people? They really religiously go to church. And they're the people who are getting from you that vote for this person. You get? After receiving a certain zeros from Amchango. You see, you're enabling, you're not doing civic education.
There was equally
and I can tell you even from the Bible.
Okay.
You see?
I'm waiting to hear you.
All right.
No, you say civic education should start in the church. Tell your congregation the right thing, the truth. Don't come and safisha a thief.
All right.
Usisafishe rada kwa church.
Let's have them
don't
respond to
tell
that.
people who to vote
But
for.
before, can I say
Okay,
something before?
let's have a response on that point, please. The confirmation.
Okay.
Sir, you're finishing your point.
It is important for us to operate within certain confines. Number one, the church does not belong to the pastor, because the church was not even built by the pastor. The church was built by contributions from the community. So when you ban the church, you see, me, I'm operating from what I have heard and seen on social media, that tunakuja kwa kanisa na tutachoma kanisa. And I want to say that you can't ban the church because the pastor has done something wrong. You need to draw a parallel between the church and the pastor, because the church is not the pastor.
Father, just to add on something.
Number two, sio kanisa zote. It is not all churches that have, not all pastors have gone to State House. There are hundreds of thousands of pastors in this country who have never been to State House by choice. By choice. So when you collectively say threaten the church, first of all, it is important to remember that the church belongs to God. So as you are threatening the church, you are threatening God, because the church belongs to God.
Father,
and that's not a threat, that's a fact.
Allow me to respond on that. Number one, you know, they say what? The white colonized Kenya and Africa at large using the faith aspect, using the churches. And our politicians, still, they are misleading the society using those pulpits and churches. My point is this. Number one, by the Gen Zs saying that we are occupying churches. Number one, they've already occupied. I don't know if you saw. They have occupied. By this manner, they came and denied the politicians a chance to speak. And it was alarming to them. Some of them walingiza baridi, tuongee ukweli. Number two, churches, you are the management of the church. So you should govern accordingly, purposely, diligently. Hatuna shida na hiyo.
Now, first of
Thank
all,
you.
It is not all churches that actually welcome politicians. There are just a few churches that actually welcome politicians. Wait. It is important for us to draw, I said, a parallel line between the church and the pastor. These pastors came and found the churches there, and they will leave the church there. So the pastor who has invited the politician and desecrated the altar, it is between him and God. And David said, I will not lay a hand on God's anointed, because God has there's a system in scripture on how to deal with rogue ministers. And God has capacity to deal with them. And this morning on a radio station, I remember saying, chuma yao iko motoni, because there is evidence in the Bible where God dealt with rogue ministers, and he will. But I also want to bring it to your attention again, that these pastors who have gone to State House, what they go to do there, I don't know, because I was not there. But I also want to bring it to your attention, young man, that yes, the colonialists came here. But remember, the missionaries came first and then the colonialists followed. They built on something that was not theirs. And I want to tell you that majority of the schools that many of you have gone to were built by churches. Majority of the hospitals where many of you were born were actually built by missionaries. And this country has benefited greatly and continues to benefit greatly from the church. Hospitals, schools, and many other infrastructural developments that are done by the church in this country. And yes, it has been marred by a few pastors here and there. Just by saying, because there was a bus that has an accident, now we shall not be using buses. I think that is wrong.
I think you're missing the point. You're missing the point.
Uh-huh.
Let me make it clear. Number one, Gen Z, we're speaking with one voice, right? We're speaking with the one voice. The church also should speak with the one voice. We are serving one living God. We have not seen churches or bishops
going to see the victims at Kenyatta National Hospital.
Excuse me, I have a question for
yeah,
Pastor.
yes, okay.
Yeah, Pastor, you've said you are not welcomed in State House. So from what I know in the Bible, we have someone who's called Samuel. Samuel actually was the one who ruled the people of Israel before we had kings. We also have Nathan. Nathan went and warned David against the sin he had committed. We also have John the Baptist. John the Baptist also was against the corruption which was in the society back by then. So if you are not welcomed in the State House, are you really there against what is really happening in the country?
Ahmed has probably...
Have you seen my clips? Just a minute. Have you seen my clips?
To bring some objectivity to this discussion.
Yes, we need to have some order and perhaps advance the conversation.
Many pastors today have spoken against the king, and they have warned him, just like John the Baptist warned Herod. And during Samuel's time, it is actually the people who rejected God and asked for a king. And God gave them the king. And God told them what would happen to them if they were ruled by a king. And so they chose a king rather than God himself. So they got what was coming to them. But I also want to bring it to your attention that yes, are there pastors who have gone to State House? Yes. Have they brought shame to the Church of Jesus Christ? Yes. Yes. And are there mechanisms to deal with them in Scripture? Yes. Is it upon you as young people to take arms against the men of God? No.
Well, let us acknowledge,
draw a line.
Rev, let us acknowledge...
There's a difference between a pastor and a king.
Rev, let us acknowledge that we are not purely a Christian, 100% Christian.
It's
we have
true.
Muslims and all that, and
It's
perhaps
true.
Ahmed has fallen short
and
of
I
just
can tell
reminding
Ahmed
you
that
is different.
Sake.
Yes.
If a Kathy went wayward, it is not the responsibility of the young people in the mosque to deal with him, because there are mechanisms within the mosque, the Islamic society, to deal with it.
All right,
Dr.
Justus.
Thank you. Actually, for clarity's sake, my master is in linguistics and I've majored in scriptural languages. I'm one of the few scholars for Hebrew and Greek.
What's your point, sir?
So I'm conversant with the scriptures, and I can guide us to contextualize the discussion we're having here. In Proverbs 28:4, it says, those who forsake the law praise the wicked, but such as keep the law contend with them. In Exodus chapter 18, verse 21, Moses was assigned to elect leaders, actually kings. And contextually is befitting with Exodus 18:21. On the relationship that a prophet like Moses ought to have with a king. And he was told, when you are choosing a king, 4 fundamental things. Choose a king who is capable, number 1. Number 2, a king who fears God. Number 3, a king who speaks truth. Number 4, a king who hates covetousness. Now, spirituality is way different from religion. And I know religion, we can defend it. But spirituality is an aspect, a fundamental aspect of our life that all of us would want to have its foundation very firm, and would also want to have a foundation that is satisfying. And Bishop, allow me to understand where the Gen Z is coming from, because there's various expectations that are laid in various organizations or various institutions. And when we are talking about spiritual institutions and standard of spirituality, the church ought to emulate and set those standards. And the moment there are questions of capability, because capability, when I go back to the cabinet, I look at its ability to deliver on the constitutional mandate, because we are delegating our sovereign authority constitutionally. When you are talking about us interpreting the Constitution circumspectly, we are not just giving you our sovereign rights just to go and feel good. No. You're giving you our sovereign rights for specific expectation that we as a people of Kenya has given ourselves through the Constitution. So when you take the position of executive. There are specific expectations that the citizens must expect from you. And you must be capable to deliver in that office. And if you're not delivering, then there's a question mark on capability. Then on the fear of God, because the fear of God is synonymous with the fear of life and the fear of other people's rights. I would not, and I would be very hesitant to see a king or a leader who is hesitant to spill or take away innocent blood.
Fair enough, Daktari.
No, let me just finish. Let me just finish.
Because then we have to...
Let me just finish, because it was a major point of the debate.
Have to chase.
And when we talk about speaking the truth, in this land, we have been taken in circles when it comes to accountability and speaking the truth where national institutions are concerned. And this is what they are raising. So we can't castigate them that a king is lying. If a king is not speaking the truth, the scripture says that king should be brought to account. And when we talk about hating covetousness, because corruption is so dangerous that it reverses prosperity. It causes physical disfigurement. It ruins completely even the moral decay that we're talking about, us being exposed to social liberalism that are coming from outside, is because of corruption.
Fair enough.
So if we are not going to hold these leaders account on these premises, then we are lying to ourselves. And that is and Gen Zs, I'll support you on that. Leaders and spiritual leaders must account on how they are relating with the
Dr. Justus, that is in order. We want to hear what Wakili has to say in relation to the same. But even as we advance, or perhaps we take this conversation to the next level, I have read a couple of, pleas, if not pleas, then of course the presentations that the Gen Zs would want address. You've heard what it is fellow Wakili has read. And there are a couple of them that are actually circulating online and in different spaces. And we are dependent on these spaces for information as it stands right now. What will it take for them to have unity of purpose, for them to speak in one language, so that moving forward, then it's a cause that is going to breed goodness? Because when they speak in different languages and when they ask you what source is that, and I ask them what source is that, then clearly it means that we lack direction, like one of them acknowledged.
Thank you so much. And I want to bring to your attention that Article 8 of the Constitution says there shall be no state religion. And I think it says that for good reason. Number two, there is what we call the political economy. And historian says the past is not dead and buried. It's not even the past. What am I trying to say? A people, and Kenya being a people, we are here because of a 64-year-old legacy of our governance. What we are feeling and seeing today is the economic problems, but it has a foundation, which is politics. Our politics of deceit, our politics of conmanship, our politics of betrayal. And if we don't put things in perspective, we will end up missing the point and what we're trying to do. And I would like us to just have a perspective of our politics for the last 60 years, how our political culture has been formed, how it has affected the economy that we're in today, and how that can be addressed if we have to have perspective. Because I think as young people, yes, we have freedom of expression, yes, the Constitution protects us with that, yes, but we need perspective. Because if you say you're going to occupy churches, right, that is good, but you are missing the point. Because your sovereign power is limited because you already donated it. It's like you're in the middle of a marriage. Today you have your husband or your wife, and then 2-3 years down the line you feel, I don't feel this man, I don't feel this woman. You cannot wake up today and say, go to your home, go to your parents. No, you'll have to follow the procedure. Go to court, file for divorce. So if you guys are dissatisfied with this government, and all of us are, there is a procedure to it. And let's go back to 2022. In 2022, the people had a say in this government. They voted for it, right? And this is not William Ruto's government. This is the government of the people of Kenya. And it has to be very clear. If you bring this government down, you're not bringing the Ruto's government down. You're bringing your own government down. So if the people had a say to say in this government in 2022, they voted for it, right? IBC had a say to say in this government. It approved it, right? The Supreme Court had a say to say in this government. It approved it, right? The opposition the other day with the mandamanos and the bipartisan conversation, they had a say to say in this government. They approved it, right? Because we have to agree we are a constitutional democracy. The path we are taking is a path of anarchy, where there is no law. And if you get to that point, none of you will matter now. We will all die, we'll all go down to this country. And when countries go down, because remember in Libya the other day, they were saying, Gaddafi must go, Gaddafi must go. Gaddafi went down. Until today, Libya has never known peace. So it's very emotional to have this conversation, but when things go south, we will all have to sit back and say, we wish we never got here. But let's go back to 1960 just in a minute, so that we understand why we're here today. In 1960, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta became the president of this country, right? He came in. What did he do the first thing? He abolished the Senate. He created an imperial presidency. And that's where culture, that's where tribalism begins. That is where cronyism begins. That's where corruption begins. After Kenyatta comes Moi, and I want you guys to be students of history, because we have to participate in matters of national importance. We have to understand the magnitude of what we're engaging in, right? So these are not just small issues of saying this and that. We have to look at it from the 64-year legacy of this country. Moi comes into the country. He brings in the cronyism. He has, of course, a coup to deal with and all that, multi-party democracy, abolishing Section 2 of the Constitution. There comes in Kibaki. Kibaki, and it's public knowledge, he had a conversation with the political class of that particular time. They were to have what we call the NAC MOU. He put it aside. Comes, of course, Kenyatta, who is still alive now, Uhuru Kenyatta, and now William Ruto. So I think it's very unfair of us to look at this thing from an isolated perspective. We need a context, fellow young people. We need to understand that we have only one country, and countries that, if we are a democracy, we must engage in a democratic manner.
Gentlemen, even as you perhaps chime in, and it's a conversation that I've seen even in spaces that you're participating in, and as they have spoken to in matters history, in 1992 there was one thing: repeal the Section 2A, allow multi-party democracy. In 2010, the question was on the Constitution. There was some bit of clarity. Perhaps the reason there is a bit of conflict, as you may be seeing, is there is lack of clarity, one, and two, lack of what you would call, and it's something that you've said you don't want, but a leader who will be able to say, okay, fine, my group is saying this. Do you not think that perhaps even as you progress in this conversation, as you're coming in, as you progress in this conversation, you need to perhaps address those two issues?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I wish to concur with my fellow learned friend when he says that we need to go back to the root cause of everything that we are facing today.
Yes.
We as young people, when you hear them saying that occupy parliament, occupy churches, I don't want to blame them. What you have to identify from them is that there is that will. There is that will to change things in every sector, from a social way of life, the way we live, the political way of life, the way we do our politics, etc. In fact, even in businesses. So what we have to do, we need wise men who at least are going to guide these young people. Absolutely. And tell them that we started with reject finance bill that was a trigger for us to come together.
Absolutely.
And now we came to realize that we can tackle things, we can tackle these politicians, we can tell them that you are doing wrong things. You need to be straight. Now from political way of life, now we are getting to social way of life. And now they are trying to tell you that there are some things that you are doing wrong. It's not that we are good, like we are white like snow, or we are from heaven. We are all a product of this country. Absolutely. And the kind of rotten culture that we have as a country is the one has put us here. Absolutely. The politicians we are giving out there, the leaders we are electing, are coming from our own villages, are as a result of what our parents brought up, right? We cannot start blaming people. What we have to do now, we need wise men, we need leaders actually. When during this revolution, it was good for us not to produce who are leading us, etc. But again, it's time now we need leaders to come up, leaders. Again, we have wise men. They tell us now, we've started with political way of life. We have tackled ABCD. Let us get to, the other sector, and then we get to business. Like the other day, young people were coming from Andaman on Tuesday here at Ngara, Nairobi. And I was with my young friends from the university. And the matatus that charge, a fare of 50 shillings or 80 shillings was charging them 300 shillings. And was asking them, between you and the politician that voted yes, what's the difference? We have a rotten culture. Let us not hide from the main cause. Let us attack the main cause, starting from one sector to the other, and I believe we are going to move somewhere.
Actually, just to add on what my colleague has said, we are proud of this country. That's why you can see us wearing these things. We are proud of our country, and we won't get where you are thinking. History repeats itself. We had BBI. What happened? Those people, they created a panel, a commission, they ate the money, they ran away. Currently, we had NADCO, right? What happened to NADCO? Stories, allowances, money went. Right now, they want to create another one called National Committee on Multi-Sector or something to speak about the youths. They are inviting 100 people to speak on behalf of the youths. 100 people, you cannot manage the mindset of 100 people. Those are very too many people. What you are just trying to tell this government, you cannot cure diarrhea by stitching the anus.
I have this, and I'd like to say this. Since I came here, I've tried to constrain myself not to go to the church way. But we have been peaceful, we are still peaceful, and will always be peaceful. My good reverend here just said that we are going to occupy and burn churches. My senior, we respect you. I'm a son of God as well. We are all son of God, right? But our question was, and I'll ask you this very simple question. The state, as you said, Article 8, we don't have a state region. When we had this finance bill, there is no time. You have a body as pastors, as what, or your clergy and all that. That board came to talk after me going to State House. Before going to State House, they never spoke anything. Yes. They were very quiet until we occupied the church. Yes. Until one of us, and we are not occupying, we are not coming to your church. We are not saying you are clean. You don't invite your politician. I cannot come to a church. Allow me finish this. Just two questions. One was that you did not talk before going to State House. Number two, on Sunday, hundreds of Kenyans, we marched to KNH. We went to donate blood. We went to see our fellow victims who got injured. Were you there? And lastly, why am I asking? Last question.
This is a house of order.
Just 1 minute.
This is a house of order.
1 minute.
Allow us to take a quick short break because it's a commercial break.
I'll come back.
We come back to you.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Good evening and welcome.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot make this up. This is not cinema. This is real television. We came back from the break and the discussion was still popping. It was still crackling. It was still sizzling. And that's why we're here tonight to talk about this, matters of our nation. Now, I want to put everyone on notice. We're on the home stretch of this show. So let us think takeaways. Let us think parting shots. Let us think the way forward, all right? Now, you were asking, you had asked some questions.
My last question, kindly.
Yes.
And this question is this: I'm a victim of the church. My church, when I went there, when I was joining campus, when I went to maybe ask money so that they can help me to go to school, the pastor told me to pray to God so that I can get that money and go back. But now, when the pastor wants a church, wants a vehicle, wants everything, this politician takes millions of money, our money, to those churches, and those are the churches that we are going to occupy, because those monies. Imagine every weekend when these MPs and governors go and build a hospital. This weekend hospital A, this weekend school A. How many churches, how many hospital, how many school will be having?
All right. Reverend,
let me react.
Hang on a second.
Quickly.
There is Reverend.
Are Christians?
Reverend.
All of you are Christians.
Excuse me, sir.
How many of you have donated blood?
Excuse me, sir.
How many of you have gone to the hospital?
Just a minute. Reverend Kiama, just to add to that, there's a genuine concern here on the role of the church in society, the role of the church in pointing out the ills in society, including the political class. There's also a legitimate concern about a number of churches, not the entire body, but a number of churches being in bed with a number of unscrupulous politicians. We've had cases. Journalists have done investigations, have done stories about churches that are being used to launder money on behalf of politicians. You donate $1 million, but really what's on paper, what actually goes into the basket is 200,000 and so on. Can you respond to these concerns?
All right, to the best of my ability. First of all, thank you for being honest. I asked you how many of you are Christians, so you're all Christians, except him. So when you say who is the church is not the pastor. The church is all of us, ecclesia. All of us are part of the church. So when you are on the street, the church is on the street. When you go to hospital, the church has gone to the hospital. Because the church is not the pastor. Because all of us are Christians. Unless you're saying the church, the pastor is the church only.
I think they're referring to the institution.
Yes, and the institution is made of who?
And the
who makes up the institution of the church?
And clergy.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm bringing clarity here. Who is the institution of the church? When you say the church, do you mean the pastor or do you mean the congregation? It is all of us put together. We form the church. The pastor and the congregation. We are that institution.
Yes.
When you say Kenya, do you mean the president or do you mean the president plus the people? It's all of us. We are Kenya. Because Kenya is not just the
when
president.
things fall apart, that's now where the agenda of who's the church comes in.
Now, are you referring to the clergy or the church as
we
per
are
his
referring
definition?
to the clergy.
I think after it's clear.
And forgive us for saying the church. Let's move on from that. Now it's the clergy we are talking about.
Okay. Very good point. Would you care to respond to that?
Okay, so if it's the clergy you're talking about, it is important to remember, in any group of people, they are good and bad. They are good and bad. So if, for example, I serve with the Kenya Assemblies of God, if you have a problem with a pastor within the Kenya Assemblies of God, then you bring it to the Kenya Assemblies of God, and we have internal mechanisms of dealing with that rogue pastor there. If it's the Anglican Church, they have mechanisms to deal with that particular one. The Archbishop of the Anglican Church says that there is no room for politicians to stand in the pulpits of the Anglican churches. But are there a few who still invite them? Yes, and they have internal mechanisms of dealing with them. And so yes, there are problems because the church is supposed to be the moral fabric of society. Has a church failed in some of those areas? Yes, but it's not all the churches, it's some of the churches. And so we can't generalize and say all churches. Yes, there are few rogue ministers.
But Linda,
yeah.
let me ask you.
And I think it's important for us to get to a place where now we now don't just generalize. If you have a problem with a certain pastor, then call them by name.
Fair enough,
but
Rev.
Linda,
Rev, fair enough. We are coming to you. Allow me to read these messages because even the people who are watching, have a say here. The Gen Z leader is Jacob Juma, ? Are they connected with the dead now that one of them is presenting what is in front of him? The cause from the beginning was good, but we seem to have diverted from the main agenda. Somebody else says the Gen Z are talking about Ruto, #Ruto must go. Okay, then after Ruto goes, What is the plan? All right, a couple of messages. I think you have one there from X. And then the church should remain an oversight to the government and stay away from rogue politicians. Perhaps to agree to what it is that you people are saying. Apart from saying that the youth do not have jobs, does not give them room to destroy innocent people's properties. We are encouraging the youth the wrong way. Help the police and arrest the goons who are destroying things. It will show solidarity and instill morale to our police force. They are our brothers, dads, etc. and sisters. Awene quickly.
My problem is, and I'll put it in Kiswahili, ndio mtu wa ghetto aelewe. Yule pastor mwenye alikuwa na kabasha fulani ya brown ndiye amewaletea shida. We really don't like it. You know the reason why I'm saying it? Because we hate pastors that are escorted from State House with the First Lady with the brown envelope. You said you don't know what they always go to do there. Check what is inside the brown envelope. And now our main problem, sisi ka vijana wa mtaa sasa, is the 100 intercessors that are busy taking a lot of cakes and a good budget from the office of the First Lady and the office of the Second Lady. What are all these offices for? Pastor, what are they interceding for? Look at one minute, Pastor. Look at the state of the nation. What have they been praying for? It means their prayers have failed. And according to Akili, he said the state is religionless. Hatuna religion that is related to the State House. Now, you see how our president is busy quoting the word of God every day. And the word of God says, we worship the Lord in truth and in sincerity. Are you sure 100% that the president is sincere with the intercessors in the state?
Can we leave those questions to be rhetoric and perhaps go to the next level? Because
has been quite silent.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I have a question too.
Yes.
You've said that all of us are the church, right?
Yes.
Why is it that when you personally you are receiving those hefties from the MPs and the governors, why is it that the church does not get the shares?
Are you sure the church doesn't?
Okay, how?
Oh, Allah.
No, I'm saying how. Because, okay, number one, I am not there and they don't come to our church. So in those churches where they go and they give the fundraiser for whatever building projects that are there, does the money go into the building project or not? Now that's an audit issue. And we don't have the facts here. You understand what I'm saying? But I also wanted to say this, because I don't have that. I want to first of all apologize for your case. Because I think at that particular point where you went to church, I have a few questions. Number one, when the pastor told you that, did he say that because, are you a committed member of that church? So when you're SDA? Oh, you are a deacon. Then first of all, let me first of all say this. I apologize for what happened to you. Because I think the pastor should have, if the church didn't have money, should have mobilized the community to come through for this young man from that village and send him to school. But I also wanted to say this in conclusion, because you said we're out of time. There's a saying, and facts don't, you say you're looking for wisdom. A people, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And it is important for you at this point to regroup and ask yourself, what we had was a good thing, and it's still a good thing. Where are we going, and where are you taking this nation? Because you are at a crossroad. The nation was with you, and is still with you. But I want you to realize that social capital is not permanent. You have it, and you are at a risk of losing it. Go back to your drawing board and re-strategize and find out where do we go. Psalms 127 verse 1. If you build outside, if you do not build with the Lord, if the Lord does not build a house, the builders build in vain. Even as you're doing what you're doing, prayerfully ask God for counsel and guidance in terms of where you're going. Because every decision you make should be within the confines of the law and also moral uprightness. And even as you're picketing and demonstrating, it is important for you to be morally upright, where you don't destroy property, you don't use vulgar language, because you've been brought up in a church. It is time for even your parents to be proud of you that they brought up good, reasonable citizens who love this country and are willing to fight for it, but morally. And I want to say that I'm proud of how you handled yourself in the last 2 weeks, and may prayerfully consider to pray and to bring God into the picture. Because as a parent of a Gen Z, I can tell you every morning when there's a demonstration, my heart skips a bit and I wonder, will my son be the one who comes home or the one who doesn't come home? I hold my heart in my hand in brokenness, asking God to remember Kenya and to forgive us for the sins of this country, because they are there. I will not sit back and say that our leadership has not made a mistake. And I'm praying to God to save this country. And if God is going to use you, then I pray that you'll do it morally. Because if you don't do it right, even God will reject you. And may the Lord have mercy and remember Kenya. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Reverend, before we let you go, as you do your parting shot, is there a lesson from the Bible? Is there a biblical reference that allows us to see how we can move forward? Essentially, what I'm asking is next steps. And now I want everyone to think about next steps, solutions, parting shots. Is there a biblical example of how a problem like Kenya has can be resolved?
Yes.
Could you share that with us, please?
Anytime there was a problem in Scripture, and there was a king who did not listen to the people turned to God. And God has the capacity to put up kings and to depose kings, because God is still a consuming fire. And he brought down kings, but he also lifted up kings. And I can tell you that God is able. And that's why I have challenged you to consider this prayerfully, to gather together, even before you start that peaceful demonstration, to pray that God would guide you, as the children of Israel did. Every time they were overwhelmed, they cried out to God repeatedly against the Philistines, and God came through and delivered them. We are not unique. God can fight and will fight for this country if we turn to him. And you can't turn to him privately or corporately. And God is faithful.
All right.
And to the young man who said that we cannot marry because we are broke, my brother, then you are hooking up with the wrong chicks.
Right.
Because for us, when we were getting married, it wasn't about money.
Yes.
Richard,
just one comeback. I must give you a comeback.
The wrong chick.
I must give you a comeback.
I don't know if you remember that song I used to sing before we were saved. No romance without finance. You're hanging out the wrong crowd.
Linda, a man should
where
provide. A man should provide.
No,
it's true. But I'm saying at
that's
the
a whole
beginning.
other conversation.
At the beginning.
That's a whole other conversation. Richard, your parting shot.
Sure.
How do we move forward? How does Kenya solve its problem right now?
Thank you. Fellow compatriots, liberty is freedom with responsibility. If you go to our national anthem, there's a part that says, may we dwell in unity, peace and liberty, justice be our shield and defender. And I'll delve on the issue of justice a little bit. And Wakili in the making there would agree with me. There is what we call natural justice. And there are two principles of natural justice, which we have to put into perspective in what we're doing. The first one, and I'll say it in Latin and English, because that's the language of lawyers. The first one says, audi alteram patem, listen to the other party. The second one says, nemo iudex in causa jua, you cannot be a judge in your own case. So we have a legitimate case as young people, but we cannot judge it. The president and the regime of the day has asked for dialogue. It's fair that you listen to what they have to say. There is what we call generation. The generation comprises of 22 years. So at every lifetime, we have 4 generations alive, from age 0 to 22, 22 to 44, 44 to 66, 66 to 88. So the Gen Zs are only 0 to 22. So there are 3 more generations that are equally entitled to the peace, the prosperity, the well-being, and everything that this country calls for. And tomorrow you won't be Gen Zs. And maybe you'll be looking down to the Gen Zs and wondering, what are these people doing?
Gen Alpha.
Yeah, exactly. Probably the way the others are looking down to us. So I think it's important for us to realize that we cannot afford to achieve our objectives at the expense of the country. We can still have a country and we can still be heard. We can still have a country and we can still push our agenda forward. As I finish, I'll leave you with a stanza of a poem I enjoy. And I don't know the author, but I know the words. It's called the Desiderata, and it says, "Go placidly amid the haste and noise, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible and without surrender, be in good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to everyone. Even the dull and the ignorant, they too have their story." So however, how much you consider the people who are supposed to be your moral compass, your intellectual compass, your economic compass, your political compass, to be dull and ignorant, kindly, let's listen to them. There is no crisis that has ever befallen mankind that dialogue has never sorted.
All right.
We've had worse things like the world wars, but people sat down and considered perspectives and sorted it out. We had a post-election violence in this country. People sat down, dialogue sorted it out. We had a clamor for multi-party democracy. People sat down, dialogue sorted it out. So even what's happening today is health is the extent that it doesn't break this country.
All right.
And you've usually quoted the Constitution, so I want to take it away from you because of time and to Dr. Justus. He's quoted the Constitution.
Right.
Until the rules of the game change,
Right.
it is by this Constitution that we operate.
Right.
Could you please speak to these young ones in relation to the election year and period as you sum it up? Because it's crucial.
Two solutions on it.
Yes.
And I would not sit here and be part of talking art. I would have called them my sons or my daughters, but they are my brothers because I was with them in the streets. I have 2 bullet wounds here which have not healed. I would have not been here today, having appeared in the street to be in solidarity with comrades. I visited them in the Kenyatta hospitals. I knew there were 165 who were admitted on us by Thursday last week. And I knew 3 were dead out of live bullets. And I visited them in the morgue. So some of these things, when you're talking about them, I've experienced them, I've walked with them. Today I was in town, I saw how it looked like. So I feel you. And when somebody is talking at you, I feel it as well. Allow me to let people understand this thing they call Generation Z. Actually, it's a mindset. And it's a change that can always abort, but it will always come. And maybe if we don't address it now, it will even come back dangerous, worse than what we are seeing now. We need to satisfy their intellectual questions and quest where governance is concerned, where spirituality is concerned. Scientifically, to assess our intellectual capacity, they say we use DNA series. Human beings under the home of orangutan, chimpanzee, apes, Caucasians, and the blacks. Orangutans has a DNA series of 3. Gorillas have DNA series of 4. Chimpanzees have DNA series of 5. Caucasians have DNA series, and I wish you knew that. And these are your scientists. All the whites have DNA series of 6. And blacks have DNA series of 9. So in other words, when you talk about intellectual superiority, there is much more intellectual superiority that can be explored from this geographical location than even out there. But for all this while, through the colonial instruments and systems that we've adopted, we've been forced, and this is what they are entrenching in our curriculum, and you are learning it. And some of these guys have studied outside the curriculum, and now they're waking up and asking questions, including religion. When I'm talking about religion, I'm not talking about missionary religion, even our African religion. I'm just concluding. Now, the questions that are lying around here are...
How do we move forward?
That's what I'm saying. Are based on us being boxed, and I'm qualifying this by the contentious matter that took us to the street. Because right now we were
demonstrating because of the finance bill, which actually the content of it has been as due to structural adjustment, which as a reason, as a policy that has been pushed on us by our Caucasian brothers who are IMF and World Bank, who are our lenders. And these structural adjustments are the ones that are breaking the camel's back. And when we are coming out to ask these questions, and that's why I was having two solutions. One is understanding the mindset. This generation Z that we're talking about are not going to continue function on the chimpanzees type of intellectual ability, which the curriculum is structured about, or the system are trying to push down their throat. They are waking up, they know that their capacity, that they can do more, they can be more innovative, they can be more creative. They don't need to borrow. Yeah. And when it comes to a blame game, lay the blame where it belongs. The person who first broke the law, because the citizens participated during the finance bill, and we gave them our view. Then they went to parliament and removed them, then passed something draconian. Now we are coming back to demonstrate against it. And you're not pointing at the president, you're pointing at these guys seriously. Okay. The problem is with the president. President, listen to these people and follow.
Doctor, you know you've not
that's what I'm coming to.
30 seconds, please.
Yes, that's what I'm coming to. Now, on the financial bill, Mr. President, advocacy would give us solution, and Gen Z, allow me, as we do activism, we must also give room for advocacy. And in advocacy, we must address fair, just, equitable, and predictable tax policies. That's done by the president, without which they will ask questions again. We must have economic diversification. That is done by the president. We must have social services that should remain social, not privatized. As we talk today, education that is a right, food that is a right, are now being privatized. Now you're paying more. And you're asking these students not to ask questions.
All right.
President, the buck stops with you, and the solutions lie with the president. We got to listen to them.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, in the spirit of advocacy, and by the way, you have a lot of points. All of us have a lot of points, but we can agree this is a conversation that's much bigger than our time. I want 3 voices from the audience, possibly a 4th. If we're going to take more, we're going to have to keep them very short.
30 seconds.
Would you please deliver your parting shot in 30 seconds, starting with you? 30 seconds, please.
I'll be very fast. Number one, this is a generation that is learned. This is a generation that read a book called Kidagaa Kimemwozea, read a book called Between the City. In the Between the City, we have a character called Jasper Wendo. They waited for too long. They were promised hope, but now there's no hope. That's why we're on the streets. And we're requesting from the government as Gen Z, it's in the public domain. We need actions. We don't need talks. We need actions. We are avoiding let the government avoid extravagant trips and opulence lifestyle, and let them listen to the voice of the youth. Thank you.
Well done.
Now, I only have one point to submit. It's simple to our leaders, from the top, from the head to the bottom. It's simple. Politics has gone. All we are asking now is leadership. Now, there is no religion in this earth, be it Christian, be it Muslim, that advocates for political. They all advocate for Islam. They all advocate for leadership. And all we're asking for is leadership.
All right.
Leadership that has got wisdom, that has got empathy, and so on. Some of our leaders are actually throwing words that are kind of harmful to us. So we are asking them, their leaders, they should be empathy with us and wise. Thank you.
All right.
My parting shot is let our leaders and every leader, including the church leaders, the political ones, and the economic advisors of the president, as we are seeing, we need accountability. Please, let's have accountability and know that if we are not accountable, we cannot run from a bad government. Your children and the children of your children are going to suffer for the punitive laws that you pose to people. Another thing, we are not benchmarking with the countries that have fallen. We are benchmarking on countries that have made it in these things that you are talking about, countries like Singapore and Netherlands.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My party shot is Ruto must go. So after Ruto has gone, we'll have a government that addresses our issues and listen to our grievances. And that way we'll be on our promised land, as Raila told us.
Okay. Two things as my parting shot. One, to the youths, we've made it. We won the war. Let us retreat. Two, we need to rethink about being leaderless. Three, we need to focus and get to the goal. Finally, to the president, use this revolution to deal with the rogue leadership, recall them. Use this revolution to deal with IMF and World Bank.
Yeah, finally, just to say, my constitutional lecturer always tells me that you cannot predict the future through precision. The clouds are gathering, the rains are here, and we shall be there no matter what.
Mercy, parting shot.
To all Gen Zs out there, congratulations. Let's keep the fire burning. As church, let's also be responsible. Thank you.
Mine is inclusivity, form a new youthful body, tuendelee.
Absolutely.
All right, and back at home, only two from back at home, they say it's all right. Even as Ruto goes, remember to participate in the electioneering processes. Register as voters until then. All right, Willie from Thika, this one is an interesting one. And he says, apart from taxes, the level of unemployment would be the same. Patience. He understands you he would be the same. Patience, he understands you very well and hasn't turned his back on you. He walked barefoot, lived in a simple hut, raised in an ordinary village by ordinary parents, and hustled in the ordinary streets of Kamagut. He knows what's best for you. He can't betray his beginning. Give Ruto a chance.
All right.
Interesting. I don't know whether that is ironical or it's genuine.
I want to say thank you to everyone that came out tonight to participate in this conversation.